This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. There is never a dull moment when it comes to covering the Cleveland Browns. And I mean that sincerely with my entire heart. There is never a dull moment. Even in the dull moments, the moments aren't dull. It's truly one of the most interesting teams in the NFL. And that's why I think so many people who aren't even Browns fans tune into this channel regularly, because they know the Browns are good for something interesting. And one of the areas of the team where we knew that something interesting was going to go down for a very long time is this quarterback room, right? You got Deshaun Watson there. You got Shedeur Sanders there, Dylan Gabriel, now Taylor Green. That's a recipe for something interesting to be cooked up, because one, there's no definitive starter, and two, you can feel very strongly in either direction about the two guys who are competing for the starting job in Shedeur Sanders and in Deshaun Watson. So that's already going to make it interesting enough. We got a report from Mary Kay Cabot that really ignited a lot of different arguments. But here's what Mary Kay had to say. I'll put the tweet on screen. How Deshaun Watson emerged from voluntary minicamp with an edge over Shedeur Sanders, sources say, and has the inside track to be named quarterback one. Now, that headline is interesting, right? Because she's citing sources. She's saying her sources are telling her that Deshaun Watson is emerging from camp with a edge over Shedeur Sanders. I am speculating here, right? But if we know from covering Mary Kay in the past, Mary Kay doesn't make up sources. I know, so that's going to be like the first thing that people go to, especially if you are a Sanders fan. You're going to be like, oh, she's making up sources. She doesn't make up sources, but her sources do come from a particular part of the building, right? There are going to be reporters who are closer with certain players, closer with a certain side of the ball. You kind of have to know which group that person is close with. And not to say that Mary Kay doesn't have sources on the offense or defense. I don't know what her world is to that level of detail. What I can tell you is that she's always had reliable sources when it comes to the front office, and not really the general manager, but like the ownership side. I'm not saying that J.W. Johnson is her source, but I will say that what J.W. Johnson has said about Deshaun Watson and what Mary Kay has said about Deshaun Watson has significant enough overlap where I think it would be irresponsible to ignore it. So that's my thinking on like the whole source part of it, right? Where could her source be? What source? It's possible it could be like somebody in the coaching staff telling her this. I doubt that that's the case. Like for a coach who just got here to be leaking information like this to the media this early, that just doesn't sound how coaches operate. Like coaches aren't gonna go to a reporter and tell him who's going to start 2 days into a ultra voluntary minicamp. This isn't even voluntary OTAs. This is pre-voluntary OTAs. Coaches aren't going to do stuff like that. Scouts aren't going to really be that focused on this after the draft. This feels like it's coming from the ownership part of the building, which for, again, Mary Kay's history, where she's been the most reliable, it's been stuff like that. I think she was like anything that has to do with the Browns organization, she's been pretty reliable on. So it wouldn't surprise me if her source was something similar to like J.W. Johnson or something in the building adjacent to him. So because that's the only way something like this could come out at this point in time. And then we'll talk about this more. She then quote tweeted this story, which I thought was interesting. Right? The choice to quote tweet this story and add more to that tweet, because already you're going to get people riled up with that headline. Mary Kay then went on to say, with my breaking news here, that Deshaun Watson has taken the lead over Shedeur Sanders. So the framing of that is interesting because it's very direct framing. with my breaking news, she's calling it breaking news, that Deshaun Watson has taken the lead over Shedeur Sanders. You'll hear reporters talk a lot, and oftentimes reporters are very non-committal about the verbs and the adjectives that they use. Usually, if they're not sure about something, or if they're speculating, they say, "Hey, I think," or "It's possible that Deshaun Watson may have taken the lead over Shedeur Sanders." That's not what Mary Kay is saying. Mary Kay is stating this, and I think this is interesting, definitively, with my breaking news here, that Deshaun Watson has taken over Shedeur Sanders in the quarterback competition and has the inside track to win it. I think they should declare him QB1 as soon as possible and let the first team offense start to cook. There's no time to waste. So there's the separation, right? This first part of this tweet is still a report from Mary Kay, or at least she's stating it like a report from Mary Kay, and we should hold her to this as if it's a report by her, right? Like, this is just journalistic standards. If she's saying definitively that she is breaking news and that Deshaun Watson has taken the lead over Shedeur Sanders in the quarterback competition, we have to hold her to that being the reality, right, if she's going to report it. The second half of this tweet is purely her opinion. So once she starts saying, I think they should declare him QB1 and let him run the first team offense, that's purely her opinion, right? But again, listen to the difference about how she talks about what she thinks and what her opinion is versus what she's reporting, right? It's very clear that she feels like she has enough information, we'll see if it's true, to report that Deshaun has taken a lead over Shedeur Sanders and has the inside track to win it. It's also interesting because it was being reported last week that Shedeur has the inside track to win it. My question to all of these reports are, how in the world are we at this point, April 29th? It makes no sense for the Cleveland Browns to be at this point, April 29th. He's worked with these quarterbacks 3 days. How are we here? This makes me feel like the sourcing for this report, it's not that it's bullshit. I don't think that Mary Kay would just outright publish unsubstantiated BS. You can have a lot of criticisms of Mary Kay in her career. That's not something she's known for. But I do think that her source isn't somebody who's directly related in football ops. And the reason I think that it's not somebody in football ops, this is just my speculation, you can take it for what it is the fact that it's April 29th. And coaching staffs, if you ever talk to coaches, especially NFL coaches, they are, one, very guarded about information, and two, always the last person to admit that a competition is over, even behind closed doors. It could be a blowout of a competition. They will give that competition time because that's the process. So the idea of Deshaun outperforming Shedeur so badly in, 3 practices, that they know what to do and they're just going to go with Deshaun, that seems patently ridiculous. Okay? I don't think that this is coming from football ops. Now, maybe football ops is giving a vibe to other parts of the building that this is what's going to happen, and that's being reflected by Mary Kay's reporting. But the fact that she said this was sourced is where my antennas go up, because what coach is saying that this early? No coach would say that this early. They haven't even put helmets on, let alone actually practice. And we know who has the inside track to the competition. I think it's going to be interesting, too, if Todd has a press conference anytime soon. Because, like, from his perspective, he's not going to know where this is coming from, right? So this is going to seem like just made up BS to him. So he's going to, like, lambast this if he gets asked a question on it. That's as predictable as day and night, right? Like, I can see that one coming from a mile away. From Todd's perspective, he's not going to see where this is coming from because it's not coming from football ops. It's not coming from his coaches. This is coming from, in my opinion, I heavily speculate this to be coming from somebody that's not necessarily football ops, but has some weight there, right? Don't think it's Jimmy Haslam. Don't think it's D Haslam. But who in that ownership cabal is the most involved day to day? Who in that ownership cabal is invested enough to talk to Mary Kay about this? Who in this ownership cabal has already went to bat for certain people in this quarterback competition? You can answer that question in your own time. I'm not going to outright say it, but you know where I'm heavily leaning towards this being from. So that's the breakdown of the report itself, which I do find fascinating. But let's actually talk about what the actual argument is about. But before I do that, I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. Hey, let me talk to you about my sponsor for this year, PrizePicks. It's a fun way to win cash while you're watching your favorite teams. Forget complex betting rules. Their app is designed to be incredibly easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Speaking of, here are my picks for this upcoming NFL season. They have Myles Garrett at 14 sacks here. I think he will get more than 14 sacks. Joe Burrow at 3,875 passing yards. I think he'll be a 4,000-yard passer. I'm going to go with more. They have Derrick Henry at 1,224 yards. I'm going to go less than that. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You can follow me on the app at KWEN_C to see all of my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineups when you download the app using the link in the description. Now, the funny thing is, and in some ways it's sad, this report hit everybody's timeline. And immediately you saw the same people having the same arguments about the same quarterbacks that we've always wanted to have, right? Is this a reflection of Shedeur Sanders' ability to play football? Is Deshaun Watson secretly going to be amazing again? It's the same arguments that we've been having since the season has ended about the quarterback position. This is just the new thing to incite that argument. And that kind of disappointed me because, well, I don't want to say it disappointed me because I kind of expected it. But I thought that was interesting that people saw that, took the bait to have the same arguments they've been having. And not enough people asked the question of, like, isn't it early for this report to be out? Does this not feel a little premature? Like, I mean, it was like a month ago that I was covering a video at owners meetings. And, you know, Todd Monken said that the research of all 22 that he's done on Deshaun Watson was limited to what he's used to prepare for Deshaun Watson or other teams while he was with the Baltimore Ravens, meaning that since he's taken a job in Cleveland, he hasn't really gone out of his way to watch Deshaun Watson's tape, specifically from 2024, outside of the stuff that he had to watch to prepare for either Deshaun Watson or the Dallas Cowboys. That's a direct quote from Todd Monken. It came out of his mouth, and that came out of his mouth at the owners meeting, and that was like, what, a month ago? And now, after 2 practices, we're hearing that Deshaun Watson now has the inside track. That's interesting, right? And that kind of tells me that it can't be football ops. And again, that's how I get to my math where I'm like, I don't think this is football ops saying anything. I think I've heavily speculated that it's something in the realm of J.W. Johnson, right? That seems like the likely person to have floated this information to Mary Kay. And like, if that is the case, if that is who floated this information to Mary Kay, I just don't really buy that it's something that we should really react to that much, because it doesn't seem like it's information that's really rooted in any kind of process, right? This reminds me of like all the draft leaks that were happening a couple of weeks ago and people being convinced and reacting as if the Browns already took a player they didn't like. Like how many people were crashing out about Caden Proctor when Spencer Fannell was who they desired the whole time. We are reacting as if the Browns know who the starting quarterback's going to be, when the reality is they don't even know who the starting quarterback's going to be. How can they tell us who's the starting quarterback in April when they don't know who the starting quarterback is in April? And look, it can sound like coach speech, but that's the reality. There is nothing that could have happened in mini camps that could have made it that significant of a difference, right? So I don't think that we're close to an end on this. I think this is premature. I think this is a false finish to this. And again, like look, Mary Kay has done some great work, but I do think sometimes she tends to jump the gun. And I think her tendency to jump the gun, specifically when it comes to Deshaun Watson, is something that people shouldn't ignore, right? I don't think she has anything against Shedeur Sanders, but Mary Kay has been very invested in a redemption narrative for Deshaun Watson, and she's been invested in that narrative since like 2022, right? This is something that if you've paid attention to her work, if you've actually read her work, you've read her reports, she has been pushing for like 5 years. It's not a criticism of her. I'm just stating the objective reality, right? So if she hears information from somebody in the building that does have clout, that Deshaun is looking good and all this stuff and he's going to take the job, then she's going to run with that, because that's what she's been wanting to be true for a long time. She's really pushed this Deshaun Watson reclamation narrative, right? Like she's been pushing for it for a very long time. She pushed for it in 2022. She pushed for it in 2023, despite the fact that the Watson camp itself was pushing back on Mary Kay's redemption narrative. Remember, she would always ask him these questions about coming back, and she's trying to paint this narrative, and Deshaun would actively be like, I didn't lose anything. I'm like acting like he didn't lose a step or anything else like that, to fight back against that narrative. And then 2024 comes around and she's still pushing that narrative. She pushed that narrative all off season, right? Like all kind of stuff about Deshaun might come back during the season and start. It's not a surprise that she's saying this right now if she gets any information. I really think we should just take a step back and realize it's not even May. We don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be. Nobody really has the inside track. Like what are we talking about here? The inside track. Nobody has the inside track. It's a quarterback competition. The reality is we got a long way to go before we know who the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns is going to be. We're not at OTAs. We're not even at voluntary OTAs. We're not at involuntary OTAs. We're not at mini camps. We are in phase 0 of the offseason. Hell, we haven't even given the rookies a helmet yet. We don't know who has the inside track. How do you know who has the inside track to a race that literally hasn't started yet? And look, I say this as somebody who gets criticized often because I'm not the most excited about Deshaun Watson and I'm not the most excited about Shedeur Sanders. So when it comes to this, I promise you, I don't have a dog in this fight. Whoever wins the competition wins the competition. Whoever plays quarterback, and whoever does play has no excuse to not be acceptable because the roster's at a point to where a NFL quality quarterback should be able to be acceptable, right? I'm not pulling for either one of these guys more than the other when it comes to this. I just want the Browns to have the best quarterback possible. Whatever decision they make, I can live with. So for me, I look at this and I just think this report coming out at this point, I mean, it's a telltale sign that something ridiculous is going on here. Not necessarily in the building, but I think, the report is a little bit, I think they might have jumped the gun here. That's my takeaway of it. Now let's talk about some of the other conversations that people have wanted to have here, right? If Shedeur can't beat out Deshaun Watson, is that a negative reflection upon Shedeur? Probably. It depends on what Deshaun Watson actually looks like. Like if Deshaun Watson gets out there and he actually looks like what he used to look like, then I'm not going to look negatively on Shedeur for not being able to beat him out in his second year. But if Deshaun Watson goes out there and he looks like 2024 Deshaun Watson and Shedeur couldn't beat that guy out, well, then I'm going to kind of like look negatively on Shedeur for not being able to beat him out. It's highly contextual, right? On the version of Deshaun Watson that he's playing against here. And what Deshaun Watson ultimately does look like. Here's another thing. Am I going to get excited because I'm hearing this news early about Deshaun Watson? Not really. We've been here before. Deshaun Watson has played more football in shorts and a t-shirt than he's played in pads over the last 7 years or whatever it is. It's been a very long time, since 2020. He always looks good in shorts and a t-shirt. That's not a surprise, right? The issue isn't that Deshaun Watson hasn't looked good in shorts and a t-shirt. The issue is that Deshaun Watson hasn't looked good when it's time to play actual games. So for me, what he does in camp, not really going to care about. Maybe I'll care more about how he looks in the preseason. But even then, he's a veteran quarterback. He should have some kind of edge over the type of players he's playing in the preseason. He's a 10-year vet almost, right? Like he's been in the league for a long time. He should be able to be better in the classroom right now than Shedeur Sanders. He should be able to do walkthroughs and drills and shorts in the t-shirt better than Shedeur Sanders right now. Shedeur's only in his second year. So that really wouldn't surprise me either. But the real question with Deshaun is, what does it look like once it's real? Once you actually have to play football, and that's where things have fallen apart for Deshaun Watson. So until I see something that makes me feel better about that, I'm not really changing my mind on Deshaun. Like I've made my mind up about Deshaun based on how he's looked in actual football games for 4 years now. Like that's where my mind is on Deshaun and what makes me think the things that I think about Deshaun as a football player, not necessarily going to be changed by what you do in pre-voluntary OTAs. It's not really going to change anything. We haven't even had rookie minicamp yet. So strap in. If you think that this is going to be over in like a couple of weeks, you're fooling yourself. If you think this is the last time we're going to hear that a quarterback has the inside track in this race, you're fooling yourself. Wait 2 weeks. Shedeur will have the inside track to this quarterback competition. Hell, you might start to hear that Dylan Gabriel is a dark horse favorite amongst some people in Berea to win the quarterback. We're going to hear all kind of shit because that's what quarterback competitions give you. It's all kind of noise. This isn't going to end anytime soon. So strap in, stay locked in, stay subscribed, stay notified. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.